Hi, my name is Sagar Doshi, and today's topic is smallness, bigness, humility, awe, and wonder all wrapped up into one little blue marble. I'm going to start by reading a selection of quotations from one of my favorite thinkers of modern times, Carl Sagan. Sagan is one of the original science popularizers. He was an incredible humanist, and one of his most famous collections of quotes had to do with what he called the pale blue dot, a photograph of Earth. As long as there have been humans, we have searched for our place in the cosmos. Where are we? Who are we? We find that we live on an insignificant planet of a humdrum star lost in a galaxy, tucked away in some forgotten corner of a universe in which there are far more galaxies than people. We make our world significant by the courage of our questions and by the depth of our answers. After all, the nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies, were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of star stuff. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by that point of pale light. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. For small creatures such as we, that vastness is bearable only through love. You can all take your own interpretations from this passage, but consider this. Most astronauts experience this perspective. In fact, it's so common that it has a name, the overview effect. Wikipedia describes it as the first-hand experience of the reality of Earth in space, as a tiny, fragile ball of life hanging in the void, shielded and nourished by a paper-thin atmosphere, somehow so deserving and so needing of protection. There's another way to feel the same humility, and it's a corollary to understanding the vastness of space, and that is to comprehend and contend with the vastness of time. When we talk about time, we've come up with random words, century, millennium, eon, epoch, era, to disguise the fact that we are absolutely unable to understand how long and lasting the Earth's history has been. So let's break it down. The earliest writing from a human civilization as we know it comes from the Sumerians, roughly 2500 BCE. So from then until now, we're talking about, let's say, 5,000 years. 5,000 years of human civilization. Now, Homo sapiens, our species, is known to have reached our current stage of development somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 years ago. So think of this for a moment. 100,000 years ago, there were humans, just like us, with the same capacity for hate, sadness, joy, fear, anger, and surprise. And yet, all we know of human history took place only within 5% of the breadth of the true human story. Just imagine how many people and deeds worth remembering took place in the 95% that we have forgotten. And when you look at it the other direction, it only becomes more clear. Most of us, we want to have an impact on the world. We want to make things better, perhaps, and we certainly would like to have our name remembered. But let's think about that a little bit more carefully. Look, rewind the clock 10 years. You were all alive and kicking back then. You can probably remember quite a few politicians, leaders, artists, musicians, intellectuals, of course, family members and community leaders. Fair enough, people can be remembered that long. How about 50 years ago? Well, still within a generation, but now we mostly remember certain key leaders, maybe certain influential creators. Certainly, most of the legislators and politicians running around for fame and shame are lost at this stage. How about a couple hundred years ago, or 500 years? You can barely remember any national leaders at that point. Only the top ones stick out. Some military leaders, some thinkers, some idea men, some idea women. But 1,000 years ago, just about everyone has been forgotten. Those that are remembered are usually distorted or remembered somehow through a myth or through a cultural tale, likely far removed from the individual at the heart of that memory. 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, well, at this point, we start forgetting entire peoples existed. How many of you can remember the empires of Akkad, or Teotihuacan, or Xiongnu, even though these were vast hegemons of the world in their time? What I'm getting at is that even if you go back just a few years, most names fall away, and with them, any usefulness to our craving for lasting recognition. Because what's the point? What's really the difference for being remembered 15 years if you're going to be forgotten in 20? This, by the way, it's no reason to feel demoralized, and simply means that when you're faced with the vastness of time, or the vastness of space for that matter, it's absurd to rely on external indicators to find meaning in our lives. We have to derive meaning internally. We have to understand what it is for each and every one of us to live a life that feels right. And believe you me, each of us must and should come to different conclusions about this. We have to look deep inside ourselves and figure out what will keep us going in the face of a universe in which we've existed for less than the snap of a pair of fingers on a speck of dirt floating around lost in the cosmos. So when things get too heavy or you feel too burdened, take yourself back to these ideas. Remember the awesome breadth of space and the awesome duration of time. And consider that you create your life every moment, with every blink. Find your own reason for being, your own meaning, so that you can stitch together those blinks, stitch them together into something that's true and right and beautiful and yours.